And hello again, and welcome to Frankly Speaking, where truth is our mission, reality our realm, said as we see it, and frankly as well. I'm Joe Spina, and tonight we have a couple of very special guests, and we'll get to them in a second after we do our Frankly Joe. Senior me. I'm a senior. I'm lucky. I have a comfortable retirement income, and I'm relatively healthy. I have an extended and loving and close-knit family living nearby. Many seniors aren't so lucky. And here is where Mass Senior Action fills the gaps. For 36 years, MSAC, a nonprofit, has acted as a grassroots organizing agent for low and moderate income seniors intent upon creating a fairer and just society. To tell us all about MSAC, its mission, its aspirations, I welcome Barbara Mann and Kathy Paul. Hi, ladies. How are you? Nice to have you here.
Nice to see you.
So I think it might be appropriate before we go into it is to tell us a little bit about yourself, both of you, and familiarize, let the folks know who you are.
Okay.
Folks?
My name is Barbara Mann. I've belonged to Mass Senior Action now for over 10 years. I didn't come the regular route. A friend of mine was a member, and her husband passed away, and I went with her just to get her out of the house.
I got you.
But when I was there were so many issues that I thought were really, important issues for seniors, and they were actually working on them.
So you've been with them 10 years. You got there by accident, so to speak.
Yeah.
And you said, wait a second, these are things that I would like to advocate for.
Right, and
Good
I had
point.
retired.
And you, Kathy?
Well, in my case, my husband and I were running the flea market on the Linway at the time, and he had to have one leg amputated.
Oh, my God.
And we moved into Lynn housing.
Diabetic?
Yes. And he had an ulcer on the bottom of his foot, and he had to have the amputation up below the knee. Before that, he was a track runner. Ran the Boston Marathon, came in 40th. But
That's a heck of a, 40th is pretty darn good, So is he faring well now? That's the case.
no, I lost him 5 years ago.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
He became a double amputee. He was on dialysis, congestive heart failure, diabetes, the whole 9 yards. If it was out there, he got it. But we moved into Lynn housing.
So why did that get you interested in advocacy? There was no place you could go for help or support?
Oh, he was a veteran, so he had support. And he had.
So, I want to make a distinction here, and I hope I can because I get a little confused. I'm a senior, so I'm interested in senior issues myself. I'm lucky, as I mentioned, because like I said, I have a decent retirement and I'm relatively decent health, and I have a very close-knit family, as I mentioned earlier. But I look at agencies. My co-host, for example, is down at Gliss, right? And by the way, Paul will be back shortly. From what I understand, the prodigal son returns. So Gliss is a service provider for senior citizens. Your organization is more of an advocacy, correct? So that's the distinction. Do you guys work hand in hand on certain issues, or what?
Oh yes, we do. But we pretty much are in education and outreach. And we go. A lot of our members belong to Gliss, and if there are problems that if it's something that we can work on, then we will help them.
So you interface.
Yes.
Okay. We have your mission statement, and if we can put up Pedro. And Kathy, you want me to read it, or you want to read it, or do you want to read it? And it goes like this, I guess. I'll read it. How's that?
All right.
Mass Senior Action Council is a statewide grassroots senior-led organization that empowers its members to use their own voices to address key public policy and community issues that affect their health and well-being. Does that sum it up pretty well?
Yeah, we're 36 years old.
Now, I noticed that you have a three-prong approach, so I'm not familiar with it. Either or. Let us know about this outreach and education aspect of your approach. Kathy or
We have
Barbara?
workshops.
Okay.
We do workshops out of the office. and we go over all the...
But when you say workshops, what do you mean by that?
Well, when we're working on bills or we're working on, it's either housing, transportation, or the health issues, we have workshops, and
To educate the folks as to the meaning and the significance?
yeah, because a lot of seniors feel like they're all by themselves.
Yeah,
When they have a problem, they think they're the only one in some cases. And
Good
that
point.
there's nobody, to turn to and nobody to listen to them. But in reality, all seniors have that same problem. It might not be the same issue, but they come up with problems.
you mentioned three things: housing, health, and the other?
Transportation.
And transportation. They
Home
change.
care,
They
the
become,
home care too. I mean,
but
we
the issues change, don't they?
Right.
So currently, what would you be working on?
Well, right now, we're working on a bill that we have on, in Boston, for healthcare. We have recently, we work on home care, transportation. We've been working with the T since 2012 on the increases for the ride.
That's the MBTA?
Yes,
So they jacked up their prices?
yes, they doubled them in 2012.
How did they
from-
justify that?
Well, they didn't.
They did, yeah.
They held all types of meetings, but, it just gave people a chance to let them know that a lot of people were going to be hurt by this. So they went from $2 to $4 each way in 2012. So we did a lot of work, and we go to the control board meetings at the MBTA. They originally came back to $3 each way.
So they dropped it down?
Yeah,
Well,
which is
let
unheard
me
of.
stop you for 1 second. Transportation becomes a critical issue because a lot of folks who are elderly, you're dealing with moderate and low income people who use these services on a regular basis. Is that
Right.
basically right?
Yes.
Yeah, to go to doctor appointments, to go to church, to go see family, go shopping, everything.
Wow. Doesn't GLIS fill that gap a little bit? I mean, I used to tease Paul saying to your big taxi service. I mean, I'm being facetious, of course, but in effect, GLIS is one of their functions is to do that. Is that not?
Yeah, what we were doing transportation in general.
Right.
But as far as the issue of the ride, it's more medically related. People have to be approved for the ride.
Oh, they do?
Oh, yeah, for the doctors.
That's, yeah, so it's like, for example, your husband, when he had his disability, would have been able to get a plaque card or a handicap for his transportation. It's basically what you're talking about. You have to be eligible and have to be signed off by a physician. So you try to facilitate that happening or make it more equitable and easier to do and stuff like that?
We would help anybody that's trying to, get like a placard or, on this case, the ride. But it has to be medically necessary for the ride.
Okay, let me ask you about personal empowerment. That's one of your prongs. Now, can you give me a little taste of that?
That workshop is a perfect example.
Okay.
We let people, they come, for these workshops. They're on different issues, but it gives them an empowerment as to how they would handle, going to the State House, talking to your representatives at the State House on issues that are important to seniors.
So that's a good point. You said when a person's lonely out there and they feel singular and hopeless, so to speak, right? But if it's almost like the dollar bill, imploribus, many to one or whatever it is, right? So you put it together and you have more power. People will listen.
That's right.
Policy advocacy. How do you determine what you want to advocate for?
Well, the
When
people.
issues come up, when bills are being pushed against us, that, there's going to be a change, if it's going to affect seniors and disabled people,
So tell me about, because you mentioned, as you both know, right now there's a national debate going on as to repeal and replace of Obamacare, right? Or whatever. So health is a huge issue, particularly for seniors. Now, we can argue all different ways to Sunday, but how do you, Massachusetts has a fairly decent health provision program, does it not?
Well, what we work on mostly is Medicare.
Okay.
And work on senior issues.
But Medicare now has been opened up to a whole bunch of folks that shouldn't be on Medicare to start with. I mean, its original intent has been perverted, has it not? You know what I'm saying? In other words, Medicare was for me and for seniors, and yet children and others have been placed on it. It's been a catch-all. You know, the Medicare expansion that took place under Obamacare. So a lot of folks who are in that program, the Medicare program, that are eating up a lot of those dollars, shouldn't be in that program to start with. Is there any is that accurate or inaccurate?
People with disabilities that are on, say, Social
legitimate.
Security, after 24 months, they're eligible for
Well,
Medicare.
that makes sense to me.
Right.
But I'm talking about an able-bodied person, you know, the definition is loose, should not be on Medicare, should they?
Well, no.
Yeah, but what they're saying is, and I don't know if this is accurate, by the way, what they're saying is that there's a whole cadre of individuals that were placed in to Medicare expansion in order to insure them, who really violate the intent of the Medicare program. Now,
Well,
that's all I'm asking.
I really
Work with
can't
just
speak on
basically
that.
seniors and handicapped.
That's right, and that's who it should
And
be.
they're all on fixed income.
Yeah.
And they're below the poverty line or above, but they can only have $2,000 per single person for assets, and that includes their funeral policies and everything, and it's $3,000 per couple.
They have to revisit some of these things, ladies.
Yes.
They really do have to.
Well-
Can we get a few of these facts down? Pedro, can we put up, and I love all this, keep us covered. I mean, you folks are out there at the State House doing as best you can, huh?
Yes.
We'll get back to that health one because I'm really concerned about it from this vantage point. You know, when I taught school and people would ask me about things, you know, for example, health issues, and I'd look at, and I used to use an analogy, Kathy, something to this effect. You got beautiful hair, and so don't you. If you walk into a CVS store, you'll find rows of shampoo and conditioners of all different flavors, at all different prices, all different qualities, variety. And so you get something at a decent price. That, to me, is the way we should deal with healthcare. Make it competitive. If you have just one shampoo and one conditioner, they can charge any price they want, and it can be terrible quality. That's the danger of universal healthcare. It's monopoly in every quarter is not a good thing. The more you have, the more variety, the more choices you have, the better off you are. You folks are advocating for more choices, correct? For seniors.
Well, yes, but we want to preserve what we have.
Well, yeah, of course you want to preserve what you have.
We want quality.
Oh,
But it
that's the
doesn't
point I'm trying to make,
always
Kathy.
definitely mean-
You're not going to have quality with monopoly. Monopoly or universal health care does not guarantee. Look at what's happening over in England right now. Is the little kid that they want to bring to the States, you know, to give them you know, that's the danger that you had a bureaucrat saying, well, this kid's life is valueless, so no. I mean, that's the argument. And what I'm happy to hear is that you folks are out there pushing for people who are disadvantaged, pushing for people who are, you know, who are economically deprived. I'm not. So I'm in a different category. And you have to educate me, okay? Seriously.
But you'd still use your Medicare.
Pardon?
You'd still use Medicare, even if you...
I do, but I
weren't
also have that other thing, you know, that I have. What
Part D.
Yeah, I don't know what it is
The
called,
prescriptions.
enhanced. You know, I was not happy when I turned 65 and all of a sudden they ended up on the
fell
government
off the
program, you know? I was much happier with the original insurance that I had to start with. And I had no choice because I was forced and mandated into a program that I really didn't want. So, some facts. There's over 1,200 members and growing, right?
Yes, we have 300 in North Shore.
Which is your largest.
We're the largest right now, yes.
6 active chapters, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Can we put that up there, Pedro? There it is. And they're in Boston, Bristol County, Cambridge, Somerville, Greater Linfield, Metro North, and the North Shore
Springfield.
communities, right?
Springfield, right.
I'm sorry, Springfield?
It's Springfield,
Oh,
not Linfield.
okay.
Well, Linfield's under North Shore.
Are there 1 million of us old folks in this state? That's 1 out of 7, right? With probably roughly 7 million population, and there's 1 million of us. That's a pretty good number. And I understand from your literature that should double
Yes,
within the
yes.
next 20 years or so.
Yes,
Is that correct?
That's true.
And 1 in 10 of those seniors is living what you'd say, Kathy, at, I can't believe it, at $10,800 a year. I mean, that's incredible.
Yep.
And that is where you come into the picture.
And 1 out of every 6 can't afford.
Is it not 1 out of 6?
Well, 1 out of 6 can't afford basic needs.
Well, 1 out of 2 can't live below 30,000 according to your stats. Is that correct? So, which is what deemed as the cusp of being in trouble,
Right.
economic trouble.
Right.
And your aim, once again, is to create a more fair and just society, which is a good thing. How you do that is a trick.
Yep.
I love this next graphic that I have here. Pedro, stop the cuts. I mean, I think this is so unique, and I hope that's not one of your bums up there. But Kathy, it seems to be that one of these looks like yours. What was this all about?
Well, we've used this different times to keep us covered. What we've done was, if there were issues, on hospital issues or medical issues, we've worn the Johnnies with the butts, and we had a sign that said, "Keep us covered." And it stops the traffic. People, it gets the point across without, and we've done it at the State House this day, this one in particular. We had just come from the State House. We had gone up to see Governor Baker that day. And, but we've used it for a lot of different issues.
I think it's really creative. Kathy, what were the cuts that you wanted to stop?
On that particular day, or
On any-
others?
Yeah.
Well, when they wanted to close Union Hospital, that was one issue.
And they end up closing it, by the way.
I know.
You know? What else?
That one in particular was the health safety net.
And explain that to me some.
Well, the health safety net is a program that they had, and the governor did not want to fund it. And it helped people that were a low income. And but this, he didn't want to fund it, and he did cut it back in December.
Let me ask a question about cuts, the definition of cuts. In politics, words lose their meaning. If someone gets $10 and then we propose to give them $12 next year, instead give them $11, politicians say that's a cut, when actually it's a dollar gain. You follow what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So when you talk about cuts, if you're talking about that you had a level, call it $10, and next year you're only going to get $8 or $9, that's a
if the
cut.
prices of everything stay the same.
Well, we understand that, so you can build inflation into the thing, but we haven't had inflation, you see?
Right.
So that's the other fallacy, is that inflation has been stable. So sometimes you have to ask yourself, where do we go with these types of things? And these are the dilemmas that I have. I mean, I think that it's wonderful the type of work that advocacy groups do in protecting issues that are real. At the same token, I'm a Libra. I'm looking for balance. I'm saying, at what point does advocacy kill the golden goose? I mean, if we keep cutting fares down and the MBTA doesn't take in enough money to support itself, nobody's going to have a ride, you know? There's got to be a particular point at which, you know, I believe in discounting and I believe in giving folks that need help the help, but I don't believe it should be across the board.
Well, we do our homework on those scores.
Good.
We went back several times to the MBTA and we brought them facts, numbers, and they were able to see that, yeah, they could do differently and still not hurt seniors and handicapped.
Well, for example, you mentioned that you have to qualify, you have to have a doctor's certificate. Is there a way in which if the MBTA turned around and said, okay, you walk into their bus and you show them this particular card that you have because, you've been deemed to be able to have this discount, that's fine. But a guy like me that's a senior pays full price.
No.
They don't make that distinction? Why should
Are you talking about the bus and trains, or are you talking about the ride?
Well, I don't know. You tell me. The ride is different. Is that the thing?
Yeah. The ride is the vehicle that pulls up to your house.
So you're not talking about me jumping on a bus.
No.
That's the distinction. Thanks for bringing that up. Go ahead.
Because I have the senior pass.
Right.
And I get the monthly pass, and it's $30 opposed to what the working people pay, which is more. And I can ride bus and train. But the ride is for elderly and handicapped people so that they can get out where they have to go.
Thank you for clearing that up. So is the ride, what is the ride? Is that MBTA? Is it GLIS?
Yes.
Is it both or what?
It's both.
Both?
The MBTA owns, GLIS comes in and
I had always thought, seriously, Kathy, and excuse my ignorance, I had always thought that those rides didn't cost anything.
Oh, yeah, well,
That's my misconception?
Yeah.
there is some federal money that comes in for that, but people still have to pay.
They have to pay for the ride?
Yeah.
So it's not a,
Unless it's a medical. If you have a program, like under a school program, you do get the free medical rides
when
if
you're,
you qualify financially.
if you're low income and moderate income, you qualify, don't you automatically?
Well, some people do and some still don't because they're still over the limit. Like when you're going to dialysis or chemo and you're going several times a week, some people still have to pay to get to their programs.
Well, they're
See,
different.
that troubles me. So your husband, who had to go to dialysis, would have to pay.
No, he
Even-
was one of the lucky ones. He was on the bottom of the totem pole, so it just happened for him.
So what you're advocating for on the ride is to make it economically feasible, given what the person's income is, to seek and get the medical care that they need. Is that what you're talking about?
And also, there is a program that since 2012, a premium program, and it goes 3/4 of a mile beyond a bus stop or a train station, and they charge more for that. They charged, at the time it was $5 each way, but it was, for a while there, they did, right now I think it's $5.15 or $5.25, something like that. But what they tried to do earlier this year was do away with that premium ride. Now, one of our people that belongs is 97 years old.
97.
Yeah, and she's very active with us. Dot Macchione, I don't know if she wanted me to say her name or not, but I did. She's 97 years old. She's active with us. She goes to the State House. And in her case, her daughter lived beyond that 3/4 of a mile.
In Beverly.
In Beverly. So she would drive, she would ride the ride to the daughters, because the daughter had been sick and she couldn't drive, and she had no other way of seeing her. And so that was one of the things that they tried earlier this year. They tried to do away with completely because they didn't want, it was too expensive a service and they didn't want to do it. But we went to all the control board meetings, and Dot did go and talk to the board herself. And
The 97-year-old.
at 97 years old, and they did away with it. They left it alone.
In one of your, I noticed before we did the show that I see you standing, a couple of you standing with Governor Baker. were you able to persuade Governor Baker to listen to what you were advocating for, and were changes made in your benefit? Or is it ongoing?
He listens,
And were you waiting?
but then we're still waiting in a lot of cases.
And you feel optimistic that he has a sensitive
Well, we keep
ear?
going back to visiting him, yes.
We-
We have brought him postcards. See, we get a lot of stories from people, and that's what makes us, in writing, we have it in writing and postcard signing, and we take those stories.
At that,
And you bring them as testimony, right? Living
Yes.
testimony.
we had over 4,000
I want to ask you about a
postcards.
couple of folks that I took some quotes from your literature, and I was unfamiliar with one of them. I was very familiar with the other one, and I'm interested because both of these individuals were serious activists, and you can look at activists any which way you want. In many ways, let me put it this way: Jesus was an activist, and Mahatma Gandhi was an activist, and I suppose our founding fathers were activists. So it depends on how you want to define activists and what the job is that they've done. Ella Baker, I never heard of her, and she said, "Give light, and people find the way." She was really a tough woman when I looked her up. Is there a reason why these two folks were chosen? Angela Davis is famous for her Black Panther days, and she's a professor and has been for many, many years at the university level, and her quote is, "I'm no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I'm changing the things I cannot accept," which is an awfully interesting play on words, and we're thinking about. But both of these people would be considered, in my worldview, as being activists of a sort that I'm not familiar with, right? Why did you choose them, or why are their quotes part of your lexicon?
I don't
We
have-
don't take it, we take charge, is what we work.
Is that what you're looking for?
Broke it down to, is that when things come towards us and we're not happy as a group, we take charge and we just decide we've got to get them to listen to us. We're people. We're
It's
not books on a shelf.
It's interesting because what they say is change, is inevitable. Change is always happening. It's a question of the pace of change. So if you look at slow change, otherwise known as evolution, right? Kind of a slow process. Sooner or later, egg rock's not going to be there. You and I aren't going to live long enough to see it, but it's not going to be there. And then if you want to get rid of egg rock, that's called a revolution. You blow it up, right? So the play between evolution and revolution is interesting. How do you accelerate change? Some change needs to be accelerated. I suspect that's what you're talking about.
That's right.
Is that
And
accurate?
at the same point, we're not books on a shelf. We're people. And when they want to cut things and it's going to hurt people,
You step up.
we step up. And we don't step down. We keep going up. We'll go all the
1,200
way to
strong,
the
huh?
moon if we have to.
Well,
Because people have got to have decent lifestyle. We're not asking for everybody to live in the White House, but we want a roof over our head. We're not asking for doctors who can make all the changes in the world, but we're asking for good doctors. We're asking for good medication,
Sure. And this is
good
why.
transportation.
Yeah, and we have to, and that's a great debate to have. How are you going to keep doctors if you universalize health care? Because a lot of doctors aren't going to go into the business anymore. It's not going to be worth it for them, okay? We have to start rethinking things in a serious way, and I hope that your partners. You've got a lot of accomplishments I see on this sheet.
Yes.
So why don't we run down a few
Okay.
of them? Statewide, you got the passage of Medicare balanced billing law.
Right.
And explain that to me a little bit.
Well, before, when you went to the doctor, if it cost, say, $200, and Medicare would pay $100, then at that
You
point,
had to make up the
had to
difference?
make up the difference.
Really?
And it started in Massachusetts, but we got it done throughout the country, so that the difference between that now is that they can only bill you for what Medicare will pay.
And then about this discharge.
That was
This
1986.
You won that in 1986. That's 31 years ago.
Yeah.
My math is pretty good, isn't it, huh?
Yeah,
For
that's
senior,
when people started stepping up to the,
that's when you
Right.
came into being.
Yeah,
So-
1981, yeah.
Oh.
We're 36 years
So,
old.
and then what about this prescription advantage? Is that the thing, so that you go to, like I notice when I get a prescription, I pay $5. Is that as a consequence
No.
of that?
Originally, the prescription advantage, it was like a subsidized prescription policy, like a drug insurance program that went through the state. And it was actually, it was funded through the budget in the state. And little by little, it's been eroded now. It's still in the budget, but it doesn't pay much. It used to help out when people would go into the donut hole where they would have, I'm not sure on the exact figure, but I think it was around $3,600 that they had to pay on their own before
Well, some
they
of the
came out
costs
of
of
them.
drugs would just bankrupt anybody.
Right. So
And
this kept
you
it.
have to, and your life depends on them.
Right.
Yes.
It's still available, but right now it only helps people that are in the donut hole.
How do you feel about it? Let me just throw this out there because it's coming up on the city council tomorrow night. We're filming on Monday, and tomorrow night they're going to be coming up with this medical marijuana thing. How do you folks feel about medical marijuana? I mean, is that something that's a good idea, bad idea, or?
Well,
I'm wondering who, everybody says it's going to pay a lot of taxes, a lot of revenue is going to come to the city. Well, if folks don't have the money to pay for the ride, and if they're looking for subsidies, how is medical marijuana going to be a windfall?
well,
I think it's an excuse for recreational marijuana.
well, I can't help you on that because
Neither can I.
well, there are
I don't
people
know.
who have cancer,
I don't have a problem with that.
No.
who use it. My grandson has sickle cell, and it helps him.
And I understand for glaucoma and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think anybody has a problem with using it for medicinal purposes. The problem is where do folks get off thinking that's going to be a great revenue producer for the tax base? It's amazing to me because who can afford
They figured that
it?
out when they put tax on liquor. They figured that out when they put tax on cigarettes. People are still smoking cigarettes today at $12.
Not me. I quit.
But when you walk down the street, you still see
I
butts
see it.
all over the street.
But it's self-defeating, I mean, my simple point is this, is that if the cost of drugs is skyrocketing, right? And marijuana or whatever is going to be looked at as a medicinal drug, what do you think, the price is going to be 27 cents? That's going to skyrocket too. Then how is it that you folks who are trying to help out folks who have financial difficulties, how are they going to afford it? They need a subsidy. Look, in a just society, which you're working for, in a just society, those who have pony up a little bit into this pool to take care of the people who have been disadvantaged. That's fine. I don't think anybody has a problem with it. The problem comes in is when things are abused, and I don't know. Drug pricing is gone way off the charts, I can tell you that.
Yes, it has.
My son is a juvenile diabetic, and the cost of insulin has gone up unbelievably. And so in 2008, you started working on that. Tell me about that.
On what?
On the drug pricing.
Oh.
That was one of the things you worked
Yeah,
on.
yes, we did. The no gifts to doctors and the academic detailing campaigns which impacted drug pricing and reduced prescription costs, not only for seniors but for all people in Massachusetts. We've worked on several of these issues, not just on drug pricing, but we've done it on home care and health care.
Oh, yeah, very important.
And housing. Housing is a big issue. It was even in 2009. Ocean Shores in Lynn was affected by that. And so we were able to get that in the subsidy back for the people that were in there. There are a lot of different places now throughout the state that are coming into this by the time by 2020, where a lot of this subsidies through HUD and are coming due, and the people that own the buildings at that point can take it and put it back. The subsidies would go away, and they'd put the people in.
Well, the buildings are paid for.
Yeah.
So that's why they want to go up, because when they initially started, they got low interest
I got you.
on the payment,
on no
on their
interest.
payment for the buildings.
Well, I got to move on because you guys are interesting. It shows going faster than I would have realized. And
Okay.
there's a whole bunch of things here that I would like to get to. Maybe we
Okay.
can have you back in again if you'd like, and
Sure.
we'll get over some of the other ones. Anybody that's interested in finding out what MSAC
Yeah, Mass Senior
is up
Action
to,
Council.
there's a litany of, back in, for example, in 208, this got to do with Lynn, Ocean Shores, they fixed it, make sure that they would be affordable, the housing there, scoped out for 20 years, and you got 10 more years to
They tried to go
go.
up to like 55, 60% of a person's income.
Yeah.
When it was supposed to be a third.
Yeah.
And that would have put a lot of people out on the street.
Well, you won that one too. So you guys are pretty effective. Folks, we opened up, and ladies, if you follow along with me, I got a feature here called Legends of Lynn. And you don't have it, I'm going to put it up there. There's some of the folks, and I can't even find my own work anymore. So, Legends of Lynn, and the very first one is Tommy McGee. And I want to say a little bit about Tommy, if I could. Thomas William McGee was truly a Lynn legend. He was the epitome of what Tom Brokaw called the greatest generation. A Depression kid, he fought for 4 years as a Marine in the battles of Saipan, Iwo Jima, and others, and he earned a chest full of ribbons. By way of the GI Bill, he attended Boston University and graduated from BU Law School in 1953. He turned to politics, serving the people of Lynn as a city councilor, state rep, and as the longest-serving speaker of his time. Tom McGee was revered and respected by folks who represented and garnered a reputation for never turning a deaf ear to anyone. That was Tom McGee. Patsy Caggiano was an interesting fellow. Pasquale Patsy Caggiano indeed was a legend of Lynn. Colorful, he was dynamic and persevering. For over 20 years, Patsy Caggiano was either elected or ran for an array of political offices, from city councilor to state rep to lieutenant governor to governor, Congress. He ran for mayor multiple times, and on the seventh time, he finally won, only to succumb to cancer right after his inauguration. But he did set the stage for a whole new generation of Lynn politicians. One of my favorite ladies in the world, Virginia Barton. Mother, educator, activist, and as her son Gordon describes her, Gordon Buzzy Barton describes her, a gentle advocate. That's the way he was fond of describing her. Virginia Barton was, of all these things, the genuine legend of Lynn. She always wore an infectious smile, despite having tasted the bitter bile of bigotry. Don't look down on others unless you're helping them up, she often counseled her daughter Pat and others. As a lifetime member of the North Shore chapter of the NAACP, and as a co-founder of the Community Minority Cultural Center, and as a passionate advocate, like you folks, for literary programs such as the federal Title I, Virginia Barton's life's labors bore the fruits, sweet fruits of progress. Last but never least was Walter Bovarini. He's a legend. He's a legend in himself. He flew over 35 combat missions in World War II and was awarded the Air Medal and 4 Oak Leaf Clusters and the Distinguished Flying Cross. Following his discharge, Walter attended Boston College, where he was a member of the Eagles football team. Upon graduation, he coached, taught, and became a vice principal, before embarking on a career as a state legislator, where he served for nearly a quarter of a century, principally as a state senator. He was instrumental in creating North Shore Community College's Lynn campus, Senator Bovarini loved opera and loved mentoring generations of young people. Legends of Lynn. Do you folks know either one any of these trades? Virginia, I'm sure you knew. Virginia
Yes,
Barton?
Yeah, did you know?
Do you remember her at all?
I didn't know her at the time because I didn't live in Lynn. I lived in Boston at the time, but I live in her sister's apartment.
Really? Isn't that something, huh? I mean, talk about coincidences. Things to think about, folks. You can take a look at these. Folks, why doesn't glue stick to the inside of a bottle? Have you ever thought about that, Barbara?
Probably because there's no air.
I don't know. You think I know the answers to these things?
Oh, I thought you had answers
Well,
too.
what are you sticking to it? On the inside of the bottle. On the outside, you're putting the label. What are you putting on the inside that's going to stick?
Why don't start with me, Kathy. Why don't you ever see the headline, Psychic Wins Lottery? I haven't
Because
won
they
it.
would have to give up the lottery because everybody would go to a psychic and didn't know what to do.
See, pearls of wisdom here.
I know.
Why is it that doctors call what they do practice?
Oh, that's,
Practice makes perfect.
You think?
And they're still
I
trying.
hope they don't. I don't want them practicing on me. What hair color do they put on a driver's license of a bald man? And lastly, why do they put braille dots on a keypad of a drive-up ATM?
How
Things to
else is
think
the
of.
person supposed to get their money out?
well, how
The
they
question is, how
driving?
do they drive if they're blind? Witty.
If you drive up to a driver, I drove my husband. We had a handicap van.
Yeah, but how
and
did he?
I drove him up.
Then he had to switch seats with you, huh?
No, I drove him backwards.
I love this lady. Witty. The function of socialism is to raise suffering to a higher level. Norman Mailer. Socialism is a philosophy of failure, the creed of ignorance, and the gospel of envy. Its inherent virtue is equal sharing of misery. Winston Churchill. There is nothing in socialism that a little age and a lot of money will not cure. William Durant. Socialism in general has a record of failure so blatant that only an intellectual could ignore or evade it. Thomas Sowell. To cure the British disease of socialism was like trying to cure leukemia with leeches. Margaret Thatcher, the old lion lady.
Well, there are many
Yeah, she was.
benefits of socialism, though.
They don't think so.
I know Medicare and Social Security are
Some, Otto von
socialist.
Bismarck, was the guy who came up with a lot of these different things. Well, you can discuss it because I'm going to give you a shot at this. This is mark it down. The fundamental principle of socialism is absolute equality. What greater inequity exists than that between God and mere mortals? So God's got to go. Adam Smith talks of the invisible hand as the unobservable market force that helps demand and supply of goods in a free market reach equilibrium automatically. Karl Marx talks of the dialectic determinism, an inevitable obscure force from which we cannot escape. The process of evolutionary inevitability can be accelerated through class struggle, cultural warfare, or legislation. To the socialists, all inequities of wealth, prestige, or culture are unjust in themselves. Private property must be abolished along with family and social hierarchy. Thereafter, and justly, the state becomes the sole proprietor of all rights. Sound familiar? Mark it down. That's the perspective, obviously, of someone opposed to capitalism. I mean, socialism, a capitalist. The balance between the two, there should be a hybrid. You're right. We have to take care of the unfortunate. And the question is, how do you balance the act?
Well, on Social Security, it isn't just a matter of, helping them out. They've worked and paid into it
But
their
is that
whole life.
socialism? Is Social Security socialism per
Well,
se?
it's a social program.
Right, but is it socialism? I don't think so. It's a recognition, it's a Christian and a religious thought to help out those who in need, So, and by the way, you guys fought for cuts against Social Security, correct?
Yes.
You also did that.
In 2011, there were 3,500 of us that went into the Wang Theater in Boston, and it was to preserve Medicare and Social Security, no cuts to Social Security.
You know what I'd like you to fight? I'd like you to fight why I have to pay taxes on my Social Security. I want to know why. I mean, you want to talk about inequities? You want to talk about a system gone awry? Why should any person who's arrived at senior citizenhood have to pay taxes on what they receive in Social Security? And on top of it, they tax your health deduction. Would you believe that one?
Well, that's the IRS.
Well, that's something worth fighting for, by the way, that everybody would get behind, because that's utterly inequitable and unfair. You know, that here you are, you reach a stage of life in which you are entitled to this payment, which is not a heck of a lot, and they tax it? That's like discounting it, right? So, I mean, these are things, you know, ladies, I'm a
Would you
confirmed...
like to become a member of Mass Senior Action?
Why not? But I'll let you know ahead of time, Kathy, I'm a confirmed capitalist. I think capitalism is the golden goose that lays the eggs that helps us all out. I'm not in business of killing the goose. However, I am in the business, you know, the better nature, Mother Teresa's of this world, I love them. I love you gals because you're dedicating yourself to something you believe in. And I want you to make me a better person, to open up my mind and my ideas and have a little sensitivity, because I'm lucky. I don't need your services, but there are people that do.
Yes.
And you may at some point.
Well, yeah, I may. But that's, the point is that I'm fortunate. And there's no reason in the world why we can't take care of, as a just and humane society, the unfortunate. And my problem with socialism is that it does not accept competition. It does not, it wants to make everybody the same. You're not the same. I'm not the same. We're different. That's reality. I'm saying we should approach things in a greater sphere. Social programs is a different thing than socialism. Social programs are necessary. I'm a social animal, but I'm also an individual. It's a combination of things. And I tend to think that we miss that point. I've had a wonderful conversation with the two of you, and I hope that you come back again. I hope that you've had one too. I got to get to my comments, otherwise they're going to turn in front of me. Anyways, I like some of them because they say good things. So, to our comments. I made the mistake of suggesting that we ought to have a local income tax maybe to offset some of the costs of running government, to which we got a resounding no's from everybody. More taxes on Lynn, so they're accusing me of being, you know, like MSNBC, which is the anathema of what I'm all about. You know, so folks, I haven't been bit on the neck yet. I was just throwing it out there. I told you I didn't like the idea, but if people are serious and they have, you know, be upfront about where would you get money from. And I got a very simple no from someone else, which was fine. I did a segment on hate. You know, I saw a headline that says, Marblehead denounces or renounces hate. And my question was, well, who's in favor of hate? And what is hate? What are you talking about? I mean, to hate going to the dentist is entirely different than to hate someone because you don't like the way they look, right? So let's make some distinctions. Let's be sure about our definitions. So here's the responses. By the way, Malcolm Mitchell was our guest last week, very nice guy. And someone said, Malcolm was an outstanding guest. Thank you. Why is it hate only when it's non-Christian? I don't know what the question mark there. The local school system was guilty of hate for sure for kicking out Christians from the school. I believe they were talking about Gordon College, got thrown out of the city of Lynn because of its position on gay rights. I think that's what they were referring to. From what I remember, and here's the retort, from what I remember, Gordon College was excluded due to their discrimination against gay people. If a faith believes something, is it discriminatory? We have to ask that question too. I mean, I don't have a problem with certain lifestyles, but if a religion holds it, isn't entitled to have those beliefs. I don't know. That's for you to think about, folks. And from Malcolm. Malcolm says, I want to thank you, Joe. Well, thank you, Malcolm, for having me as a guest on Frankly Speaking. It was very relaxed atmosphere and covered a lot of great deal of issues. The staff, and this is true, the staff at Lynn Community TV was absolutely fantastic, which they are. Dave Riley, Pedro Diaz, Sean, whatever his last name is, the Irish guy. Sure, I'm teasing Donnelly. It was fantastic. I enjoyed every minute. I hope you ladies enjoyed being here with us. We have,
Thank you.
what, 5 minutes left? So any things you'd like to talk about more? Or?
No, I just, I think that people just should know that there are groups like ours, there are places to go, that if they're having a problem, they should call.
Yeah, because actually I was wrong. We only have a couple of minutes left. Where would they call? Is there a number? Can we get a number up here? Is it right there?
Yeah.
617-284.
1, 2, 3, 4.
That's easy enough. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, yeah.
I can even do that myself, Kathy, right?
That's good.
So
And
they
when are
give-
you going to become a member?
You're very fresh, you know that, don't you? You know, you bring her along, right?
Well, you
I
see,
can-
we've got the most members out of the 1,200 out of the
I wonder why,
60.
Kathy, you know, with you out there pulling them all in. So they get a hold of you, or you.
But
Yes.
once you come, you'll be hooked.
Are you sure?
I'm positive.
You mean you allow a right winger like me in your fold?
Nothing
I mean,
wrong
that's
with
like
a
putting
right winger.
a fox in a chicken coop.
Not so bad.
You sure?
Because after a while, you just might decide you don't want to eat chicken anymore.
Pearls of wisdom, huh?
know.
Do you have to put up with this all the time,
I
Barbara?
know, she's
Huh?
wonderful. She
I can
is.
see that.
She is.
I can
But
see that.
we're just, you know, a lot of the work that we're doing now is on healthcare. A lot of people don't realize that, you know, 6 out of 10 Mass elders that live alone don't have income to meet their basic needs, which I said before. But the 1 in 3 low-income elders in Mass spend more than 20% of their income on healthcare.
That's unconscionable, and that's you know that's so far out of whack. You can't run a life that way. That's you know this is where I agree and totally.
But if you can't run a life like that, then you end up dying. And we don't want to die
But
yet.
the fact that healthcare eats up that much, you know, it is, as you know, 1/6 of our budget.
Yeah.
Listen, I don't know how this happened. I was in college. I had 3 kids while I was a student in college. I had no health insurance. I paid for all 3 of my kids out of my pocket, tending bar for my father, and I could afford it. I paid the doctor, I paid, you know, the hospital, and that was it. It's something's
And you
gone
turned
awry.
65 and everybody wanted to leave you out in the cold.
Kathy and Barbara, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
For all of you out there, until next week, have yourself a great week.